Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out to join us today. My name is Ego Chidolwe. I am the Business Development Manager for Microsoft Azure with CDW. And in today's webinar, we will showcase how you, our customers, can leverage the Azure Virtual Desktop to achieve business agility in today's hybrid work environment. Furthermore, we will showcase and share insights on how to deploy, manage, and optimize your AVD environment. Please feel free to pop in any questions you may have in the chat, and we will circle back to the questions at the end of the webinar. A brief highlight on CDW Canada. We are the leading IT and services partner in Canada. We integrate and manage a wide range of technologies to help you, our customers, achieve your business and technology outcomes. CDW Canada comes with the right experience you can trust. With over 35 years of experience in the market, we are integrated with over 1,200 partners, and we are ranked in the top 10 with most of them. We have over 2,000 technical engineers in our pre-sales and post-sales lines of business that support the various technologies of our partner ecosystem. I would like to point out that our integrated technology solutions team leads the industry in architectural expertise. Our essays take a vendor-neutral approach to address your business requirements. We are focused and highly specialized with over 1,000+ certifications under our belt. We have dedicated resources based on solution area, but also who are cross-functional and available to support your business. It's also great to note that there's no charge to you, our clients, to engage with any one of our pre-sales solution architects. Our delivery engineers are responsible for designing, configuring, maintaining, and troubleshooting your specific environment towards your projects. With our integrated services approach, we will support you in clearly defining and designing your business outcomes. We will plan the build and integration phases of your project, and we will provide the post-delivery support and management services that you require. The team today bringing the webinar to you today are Jasdeep Singh. He is the Microsoft Solutions Architect focused on Microsoft Azure, and John Atto, who is the Customer Success Manager focused on Microsoft Azure, and myself, Ego Chidolwe, the Business Development Manager. That said, I will hand off to Jasdeep Singh to take this forward.
Thank you, Ego. Welcome everyone to this webinar. I will be walking you through for the rest of the session. So we'll start with the agenda for today. I will be talking about a Forrester study that was conducted around Azure Virtual Desktop. I will also cover a quick introduction on Azure Virtual Desktop, Enterprise Reference Architecture, what are the architectural components of an AVD deployment in Azure. So we'll also talk about some of the new features and some key interesting features that have recently been introduced in the platform. I'll talk about licensing, cost estimation in advance, and also how we can optimize deployments in AVD. After that, I will walk you through a few demos around how to deploy, optimize, and manage an AVD environment. We'll also talk about Azure Virtual Desktop integration with Citrix Cloud and VMware Horizon Cloud. At the end of the session, we'll also cover a little bit around Windows 365 and some quick demos around it. And lastly, I will try to demystify distinctions between the VDI options that are available in Azure through these three offerings. We'll try to put some spend some time on questions as well. We'll try to, so you can put that on the chat. We'll cover that at the end of this session. So let's dive right in with the study on Microsoft AVD. So this study was conducted by Forrester, and it was funded by Microsoft and Intel. Here, Forrester studied economic impact of using Azure Virtual Desktop compared to a Microsoft RDS on-premises environment. We will share the link to the detailed study, but the point I wish to highlight is that the study observed about 210% return on investment and a net present value of over 1.89 million US dollars. And again, keep in mind this is compared to a Microsoft RDS environment, which is built on premises with the same size and scale. The key findings included VDI licensing costs, which was reduced by 34%, moving to Azure Virtual Desktop, and you'll see how that licensing cost saving is realized in the later section when I talk about licensing. The IT deployment and maintenance cost actually went by 59%. The productivity increased by 22 person hours per Azure Virtual Desktop just because of improved connectivity, onboarding, and security response. And of course, there are unquantified benefits of improved user experience, ability to scale in and scale out, and also overall organizational resiliency that comes with using a cloud platform. So the study highlights the economic potential of Azure Virtual Desktop. Let's quickly understand AVD solution on a high level. So Azure Virtual Desktop, or AVD, as it is abbreviated, is basically a desktop and app virtualization service within Azure. It supports multiple platforms, whether it's a Windows PC, Mac PC, iOS, phone, iPad, Android, or Linux. It enables really fast logins using containerized user profiles using a technology called FS Logics, which is which actually makes the user profiles quite resilient as well, because it containerized the user profile into a virtual hard drive, which is attached to a session host as a user logs in. Because Azure Virtual Desktop is built on Azure, it leverages Azure AD as the first gate for users to get in, and you get all the enhanced security that comes with Azure AD, including conditional access and MFA, whatever security you put in place for the Azure AD accounts, that is automatically inherited into Azure AD deployments. The management is fairly simplified. We'll see that in the coming slides. And you can use Windows 10, Windows 11, multi-session desktops have multiple users using the same virtual machine, same session host, and all these systems can be managed through Intune. The entire solution is built on zero trust principles, so the security that you put in place on your virtual network in Azure is automatically again inherited, and you can control all that security as well. Comes in both personal and pool desktop flavors. Another thing that I do want to highlight is that of course, it's Azure, so compute, storage, the physical hardware and networking, all of that is still managed by Microsoft. But in this case, compared to on-premises RDS environment, all the RDS infrastructure components, whether it's load balancing, gateway, the Poker service, management diagnostics, all of that is also managed by Microsoft. You don't need to worry about it. All you control is the image that you want to deploy on your virtual desktops, the user density, the sizing that you've done, the scaling policy, how do you want to scale up, scale down, scale out. All of that is still in your control. The network policies you can control, user management, who gets access to which app published through AVD, or which desktop published through AVD, is still controlled by your administration. Again, like I mentioned, you can use Windows 10/11 multi-session desktops, or you can also use the server OSs as well if that is the requirement. Moving on, let's talk about the enterprise reference architecture. So an enterprise deployment of an Azure Virtual Desktop has these components. I'll go one by one. Of course, your Azure Active Directory, that's the front gate. Then the other piece is your Azure AD syncing with your on-premises Active Directory. So there's an AD Connect in place. So you have the ID synced over, and there's a VPN or an express route that connects your Azure virtual network with your on-premises network, and you have your local domain controllers. These domain controllers can be on-premises as well, but you need to have visibility to the domain controller so that the login can be established. So you could have a subnet dedicated for desktops. You can have a different VNet or a subscription where you may have your desktops. The user profiles are stored on Azure file storage within the Azure storage realm. Um, this is where the FS Logix user profile virtual hard drives are kept, and this is usually um, high performance premium Azure file storage, just to ensure that the logins are fast. Another thing to note is that you don't really have to have Active Directory. There could be smaller customers that have only an Azure Active Directory tenant in place. They may not be using Microsoft on-premises or whatever Active Directory domain services. They just, for those kind of environments, it is still possible to have desktops, but Azure Virtual Desktop environment, but there are certain limitations which are slowly being covered, which I'll talk about in the next sections of what's new and interesting features with Azure Virtual Desktop. So first of all, very recently, last month, Intune device configuration for Windows multi-sessions is now generally available. So you can manage your Windows 10 or 11 multi-session session host through Intune. It is GA, so it's very much available. And then the RDP short path for public networks is also in public preview. RDP short path is a very interesting feature which was GA in for the private network managed networks, but now it is in public preview for public networks. So what short path does is that it establishes a direct connection between the user and the session host. So let's say if a user was logging in from the company's private network from our office, he will get a direct connection to the session host through the VPN or instead of going through the gateway, RDS gateway and over the internet. So that ensures that uses basically direct UDP based transport between the remote desktop client and the session host. So that enables reliable connection and consistent latency for the users. The URL for the web client has changed last month. So there's a new URL for that. And then another really nice feature, which is still in public preview, but is about Azure Active Directory joined VMs. Would be able to leverage FS Logix profiles. So that will add a lot of flexibility in terms of having multi-sessions in the environments that do not have their own Active Directory domain services. So that's still in preview, but hopefully we'll get it in GA soon. Then in November 21, the Azure Virtual Desktop for Azure Stack H3I was introduced. So it's still in preview, but it's out there. And then, like I mentioned, RDP short path, the same for the managed network. So the private network, it's already GA. Another really powerful feature that was introduced in August was the multimedia redirection, which actually allows smooth video playback when you're watching videos from Azure Virtual Desktop. So what it does is that it actually leverages the host machine to render the video, and that gives a very smooth experience for the virtual desktop user. So that is still in public preview. Then there are some nice features around Windows Defender, application control, and Azure Disk encryption support, which is already in GA. Smart cards are supported. If you have smart cards in the environment, you can still leverage your Azure Virtual Desktop. And then screen capture protection was also introduced, wherein an Azure Virtual Desktop environment prevents sensitive information from being captured by the software running on the client endpoints to capture a screen. So print screen and everything, snipping tools, things like those are kind of disabled when this setting is enabled. It's GA, so it's out there, can be used. Next, I would like to talk about the licensing. Um, so uh, when it comes to M365 users and business premium users that are E3 and above, Azure Virtual Desktop, if you're using just Windows 7 or Windows 10 or 11 multi-sessions, there's no licensing fee. You're kind of included in that. So in a way, it's kind of free of any licensing cost for M365 users and business premium as well. All you pay for is the compute, storage, and network egress. So you're not paying anything for the RDS infrastructure that you're getting in this in the solution. So all that broker service, gateway, Microsoft is managing for all the deployments. They're not charging you for that. All you're paying is for your compute, storage, and network as long as you use Windows 10 or 11 multi-sessions. The moment you switch to a server OS flavor, that's when you still need those RDS-CAL licenses, since you're using it in Azure, so with a software assurance. Um, okay, so from licensing perspective, there's a huge cost saving potential if you're using Windows 10 or 11 desktops when it comes to Azure Virtual Desktop. Okay, so we not only save on the licensing, there are other cost saving avenues as well in terms of not saving, but I would say cost optimization when it comes to Azure Virtual Desktop. Like any other VM deployment in Azure, you only pay for the time the VM remains online. The moment you shut it down, you stop paying for it. So design your environment, configure your environment in a way that you can switch off the virtual machines when they're not in use, and also leverage auto scaling features to minimize the cost. So when the load is low, the virtual machines are automatically shut down, and when the load increases, there's a feature in Azure Virtual Desktop that can start VM on logins automatically. So leverage those options to allow. I mean, there could be slowness in login, but still, let's say, keep the VMs on only 9 to 5 in the business hours when most users are online. If a user logs in at midnight, he can still get access through Start VM on Connect feature. The other cost optimization avenue is using reserved instances. If certain number of session hosts would be online for most of the times, and the sizes, SKUs, VM SKUs for those, just commit for 1 year to 3 year reserved instances, and you can save up to 70% of cost compared to pay as you go on those virtual machines. And cost optimization is a post activity, but before that, there are options to use. Uh, Microsoft provides you pricing calculator to have or plan your cost ahead of time. So before you deploy, before you design your solution, you can get an idea how much it's going to cost through pricing calculator. You can go to this Azure pricing calculator. You can put in the number of users you anticipate, the kind of session host that you would prefer, and it'll give you a monthly cost estimate on what kind of cost to expect. So now that we have a high level understanding of the Azure Virtual Desktop, I will next talk about how do we deploy, optimize, and manage the environment. I'll do some demos as well. And for this demonstration, I have a demo environment build, which is a scaled down version of the environment, of the reference architecture that I talked about earlier. Uh, I have one domain controller that is syncing back to Azure Active Directory through AD Connect. The control plane, of course, is still managed by Microsoft. All the web access, gateway, broker, diagnostic, REST APIs to have uh, are all managed by Microsoft. I have a subnet within the VNet for session host. I have one session host spun up right now, and a Azure Premium File Storage account where the user profiles are being stored in a virtual hard drive VHDX format. In terms of resources, Here are the resources that are deployed. These are the resources we need to pay attention to, the grayed out ones, like the host pool. This is where most of the administration happens: host pool, application group, and workspace. Um, so I'll explain each of those just to give an idea how these components work together and what they are responsible for, and also show you a quick demo on the Azure portal how it looks like. So the key features or demonstrations that I'll be walking you through would include, of course, we'll talk about the remote desktop clients that are supported. Uh, Next is the administration section. How do we manage this environment? How do we publish desktops? How do we publish built-in applications? And also how we can add new session host. We can use custom images of our own. We can use the marketplace image as well. I'll also talk about MSIX app attach. That's a app packaging mechanism within Azure Virtual Desktop. Very powerful tool. We'll talk about that. Also, how session host can be auto shut down, auto scaled, and how is that managed on a high level. And also, I'll touch on the GPU support that's available. Okay, starting with the supported remote desktop clients, there are several access options. You can use a web client. This is the older link, but you can use a desktop client. You can use Android phone or tablet, Mac OS, iOS client, whether it's iPad, iPhone. There's a Microsoft Store client as well, and it doesn't stop just there. Even the thin clients from Dell, HP, IGEL, N Computing, a lot of other vendors are supported. So you could replace your thick machines for, let's say, the end user. They could use these small thin clients at the front desk and stuff like that. And use Azure, I mean, connect to Azure Virtual Desktop. The experience would be very much similar to having a full-blown PC on the desk with these thin clients. So let me quickly show you how a uh, web access to Azure Virtual Desktop looks like. So I have the link already shared. So a user goes to that link, he'll be prompted his basically the Azure AD login, which is the email login or whatever. I have a test environment built for this demo, so I'll use that. Start on Microsoft.com. So the user logs in, puts in his password, and sees his workspace, similar to an RDS workspace, but the entry point was your Azure Active Directory credential. So the credential that is used for your Outlook and all Office 365 apps, essentially. So these are the apps that are published to this user. He can access Excel, Notepad, PowerPoint, or a remote desktop. So session desktop, which is like a VDI for the user. So if I click on that, a new tab opens here, and it asks for the credentials one more time. And this is because the custom domain is not set up, but production, this shouldn't be a two login process. But so you get access to the desktop. All the applications that are installed on the desktops are out there. The user has a full desktop experience on a web browser. So this is the HTML5 interface. In a similar way, there are other options like there's this remote desktop application that is installed. I have right now 2 users connected here. So if we talk about test 2, the same applications are published here in the basically in this application form. I have to log in again on this. This is the difference. The only difference is that this is a application that is installed on my PC, on my physical PC, and the both options are out there. So you can connect from here, and that desktop session will come here. And for a user, it will be like, that desktop just opened here on the. I will not go through this just to interest of time. So there are a number of options to connect to the desktops. Going back to my slide, 1 second. Yeah, so now that we understand, the access options out there, let's move on to administration. What are the administration components? Essentially, there are three. Um, First is the workspace, which actually is the collection of application groups. So this actually defines the workspace of the user. So going back to that screen here. So this is like the workspace of a user. How do you define that? This is where workspace is the Azure resource in the Azure portal. That is where that is defined. Uh, I will go back and show you the Azure portal uh, right here. So I have a workspace defined right here. So this is the workspace. And what is workspace essentially? Workspace is a collection of application groups, and application group in turn is a collection of published application and user assignments. So workspace basically define the user experience, but in the background, all these application group define which user has access to which application, whether it's published, I mean, it's an application alone or a complete desktop. Hostpool on the other side is further down uh, in terms of it controls the all the collections of session hosts that you may have. You may have hundreds of session hosts, depending upon the size and scale of the environment. You configure the RDP properties here. So when a user logs into a RDP remote desktop session, what that experience going to look like. You can block the screen capture and all of that I talked about. There are a lot of configuration settings here. You can if you need more session hosts in the environment, if you don't have auto scaling, you're doing that manually, you can add session host. If you have any troubleshooting going on, you need diagnostic logs and stuff, that this is where all that happens. So going back to the portal, I'll show you how it looks like. So in the workspace, there's nothing much, but here we define all the application groups that are there. In this case, I have two application groups defined. One is the remote app type application group. The other one is the desktop type. Remote app is where you're publishing applications. Desktop is when you're publishing the complete desktop. So if I go into these application groups, let's say I start with the desktop type. This is where you define the application, which is the session desktop itself, and the assignments. Assignments is the a list of users that would have access to these applications, which is a desktop. So test 2 and test 3 both have access to the desktop. So they would be getting access to the desktop. Um, and then once you're similarly, if you have applications published, have an application group application type application group. In this case, you would define the applications in the application section. So I've published Excel, Notepad, PowerPoint, and Word. And in the assignment section, you will put the users that would have access. So I showed you test 2 user that had access to all these applications. Test 3 is not there. And that is the reason why I have both of them connected on this remote desktop app. Test 3 just is able to see or has an ability to log into a desktop, whereas test 2 user has desktop as well as a few applications that are published right here. So 4 of them here. So these are the built-in applications. This is a very basic vanilla flavor for demonstration purpose, but you can publish any of your custom apps as well. And you can package other apps as well. I'll talk about that. I'll touch on that. So this is about the workspace. Next is the administration configurations happen in the host pool section. This is where a lot of action happens. So this is where you define your session hosts. I have one machine defined right now, number of sessions that are active. One session is active, total sessions that are possible. I just have two users defined. So there's one that is disconnected session. So two application groups defined within this session host and 5 applications have been published. So here is most of the configuration that happens. If you want to have auto scaling configured, this way you define your scaling plan. RDP properties, the VDI behavior that you want to have. There are a lot of configurations you can do. Device redirection if you want to block something, display settings if you want to allow or don't allow multiple desktop multiple displays, all that stuff. There's a lot of configurations here that are possible. There are custom configurations also possible through this advanced section. And then here you define the application groups as well, and session host too. So back to administration. So these are the three major Azure resources where most of the administration happens. I just walked you through it. And in terms of administration, if you're doing this manually, you don't have auto scaling set up. Adding a host to the host pool is also simple. You go to the host pool, go to manage and session node, and then click add. This is where you generate a key. You can either add an existing VM in your subscription, or you can defined within the same desktop subnet, or you can create a VM in the wizard itself. So you put in all the VNet information, where do you want to define it. Since these are domain joined desktops, so these are like your Active Directory domain services joined desktop, you have to provide an admin account that has ability to add machines to the domain. So virtual machine administration account, domain admin account, you'll define here, and it'll automatically create that machine on the fly. So if you go back to the portal, so session host, and you click add, a registration key must be generated. So you can generate a registration key right here. So registration key is basically allows you to add that machine. That is a authentication just to avoid any malicious activity doing that exercise. So it's pretty straightforward if you're doing that manually, but most of the times we recommend auto scaling for the large environments. Again, back to before I get to this one, let me talk about auto scaling and auto shutdown quickly. So auto scaling is you can be very creative. You can use Azure automation scripts for setting up the auto scaling. And also not auto scaling is defined, but auto shutdown can be executed through automation scripts. Start VM on connect I talked about. So if you have VMs that you have session hosts to configure to shut down at 5 p.m. every day and maybe start at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning. And if a user logs in the weekend or in a time out of this window, the VM can still be started through the feature called Start VM on Connect. That can be enabled. So that's a powerful feature in that sense. So that's all about session host. I talked about the user assignments, and built-in application publishing is fairly straightforward. You go into the application group, type application. You just, if it's a built-in application, Microsoft application, it's fairly simple. You can choose the path, whether it's in the start menu, these are all the built-in application that you may want to publish. Microsoft Word, some of them you wouldn't want to, but yeah, you can publish directly from here. If it's a custom application, you can provide a file path and the icon, all that from the session host. And if it's MSIX package, then we can use these options. I will not deep dive into that, but we'll talk on a high level what an MSIX app attach is. So it's a powerful feature because it actually makes the applications independent of the OS. This allows, if there's a new update on the application and you have hundreds of session hosts, you don't have to go in to each of them or use third-party tools to update them. You can have an image of that application, package that application in and use app attach to attach that application as a user request, log into the application automatically to the particular session host. So it improves the overall packaging experience and removes management overhead in terms of upgrading applications, and it separates the user data, the OS and apps, and it uses MSIX containers for that. um, you can deliver applications dynamically, so if a user is on a session host 8, or session host 3, and he tries to access that application automatically in the background, the application VHDX would be attached to that VM and he'll get access to it. This happens really quickly, similar to the user profiles experience in FS Logics. So it's very efficient. It reduces time for user to sign in and also reduces the infrastructure requirement and overall cost. So compared to traditional app layering, uh, through some of the other competitors, like Citrix has its own app layering uh, ability. MSIX is uh, Microsoft, has its own advantages in different areas. Like the app updates are really simplified in terms of MSIX app attach. I don't want to dive too deep into this, but yeah, that's a feature that can be leveraged with Azure Virtual Desktop. Next, I will talk about the GPU support. Azure Virtual Desktop basically supports the VM SKUs that have GPU enabled in them, like the NV and NV3, which are basically NVIDIA Tesla M60 GPU machines. They come with the grid license, so you have the flexibility to have 25 concurrent users on the same machine using the same GPU in the background. So it does have the licensing part built into the cost of the VM itself. There's no additional cost using it with Azure Virtual Desktop. You just pay for the SKU, VM SKU that you're using for session host. Similarly, NVV4 is also supported, which actually comes with AMD Radeon GPUs, and it does not support multi-sessions, but since AMD Radeon M MI25 GPU has the ability to partition itself, so you can have part of the GPU in your VM to reduce the cost. So there's that option. Okay, so that's a part that I wanted to cover in terms of demos. Next, I would like to jump into the AVD and Citrix VMware Horizon Cloud, how these solutions integrate together on a very high level. We'll touch on that, and what are the benefits of having a layer of Citrix or VMware Horizon on top of AVD. So first of all, Citrix Cloud. If you have existing investment into Citrix and you're more familiar with that, it certainly adds central management, and which is simplified. So you can leverage Citrix Cloud on top of AVD. Again, it'll be a similar experience. All the Citrix infrastructure is again, delivery controllers, all the net scalers, and all of that is still again in the Citrix Cloud. In Azure, you're just doing the RDS portion is Microsoft, and the whole solution works as an AVD and Citrix combined together. So you can have, and also it gives you ability to have a hybrid and multi-cloud deployment. So you have central management of your VDI infrastructure, whether it's deployed on premises or it's deployed in Azure, even in other cloud platforms as well. So you're able to manage with your Citrix monitoring and management tools. You can use Studio Direct and everything for one tool for everything. You can leverage the app layering tools from Citrix, like your and MCS services for image management and all that. Citrix HDX technology comes in as well. As part of the HDX is covered by AVD, but again, it is enhanced. You can get end-to-end analytics and all the additional capabilities that come with Citrix. Any Citrix deployment with power management, image management, all of that is still there. And if you have existing investment and knowledge, like I said, in Citrix, you can leverage that through simplified AVD plus Citrix Cloud kind of an offering. Right. And pretty much similar with VMware Horizon Cloud. They have quite a similar offering when it comes to, uh, I mean, same if you have, again, if you have an existing investment in Horizon on premises and you want uh, an environment built across cloud platforms or on premises and Azure, then you can use VMware Horizon as well. Again, all the gateway management broker, all of that is again VMware managed with the cloud, Horizon Cloud, and rest of it is Microsoft. You still control the user density. Pretty similar, but again, if you're Horizon shop, then that's an option too. Okay. Next is Windows 365. Windows Cloud PCs was launched last year. Very powerful service, but has a different kind of an uh, scenario where it's more applicable compared to Azure Virtual Desktop, which gives you a lot of flexibility. And even with Citrix and VMware layering on top, still you have a lot of flexibility. Uh, but if you simplicity is what you're looking for, Windows 365 is your answer. It's a complete software as a service solution, which is built on top of the Azure Virtual Desktop. Some of the moving parts have been kind of again brought into control of Microsoft just to make it more simple. There's a personalized experience because you only personal desktops are allowed. So each desktop is linked to a user, and that leads to predictable cost as well. There's a per user per month pricing for it. I'll touch on that. There's a lot of ease in terms of deployment and management because all the Windows 365 desktops are managed by Endpoint Manager through a self-service portal. You don't have to know any of the RDS architectural knowledge or information. It's pretty straightforward. You're just dedicating a virtual desktop to a user. I'll do a quick demo as well. It does support custom images and it's again built on zero trust principles that Microsoft recommends. And then lastly, it comes in basically two editions that are quite different from each other. I'll quickly try to differentiate between the two flavors. So first of all is the enterprise flavor that supports hybrid Azure AD joined and has a VNet support. So you can have these desktops connect back to your private network. On the other hand, if you look at the business edition, um, you do not have the ability to connect to VNet. These are standalone desktops connected to the internet. So if a user connects to these business Windows 365 desktops, these are like machines just connected to the internet. They do not have any private network connectivity. Um, Again, in terms of licensing, you need additional Windows 10 or 11 enterprise license whatever is applicable. And also you need to have Microsoft Endpoint Manager license so that you can manage these desktops for the enterprise edition because these desktops are highly integrated. And you also need to have an AD P1, Azure AD P1 license for those users. On the other hand, since the business edition does not have much integration into your private network, you do not need any additional licenses. So again, if you want to manage these desktop through your endpoint manager, then of course you need the endpoint manager license. Other than that, there's no additional licensing requirements. Again, networking cost is there because again, there'll be egress, certain egress amount that will be charged because the data would be going out of the VNets, your private network for enterprise desktops. On the other hand, the networking cost is predictable for the business editions. So for kind of there's a restriction on that how much outbound data is allowed, and if that is exceeded, the bandwidth may be restricted. But there's no additional cost as such for the business edition. In enterprise edition, there's no seat limit, but for the business edition, if you need more than 300 300 desktops, then you need to have the enterprise desktops. There's a limit to the business. There's a limit of 300 on that. Again, provisioning is, I will not go into the detail, but one point I do want to highlight is the policy management. You can use GPO and Intune MDM policies that are very much supported with the Enterprise Edition. Again, since the Business Edition desktop, they do not connect to your network in any way. There's no policy management as such. In terms of pricing, quickly, I know this is really small, but I hope if you see here, now it's better. So Enterprise Edition, so starting price is 2 vCPU, 4 GB. So these are very fixed specs. It's about Canadian dollars, $40.50 plus taxes, compared to similar PC in the Business Edition. It's 4 GB, 64 GB in storage is around similar pricing. So if you have hybrid, if you have existing licenses, then you'll get the hybrid use benefit as well. So at a high level pricing, it's all out there. You can Google it and take a look at it, the price comparisons. Next, I would like to do a quick demo for Windows 365, how it looks like, and then we'll compare the three options. So one second, let me bring this up. Here. So this is a kind of a recorded demo, but you can take a look how this goes. So let's say we want to provision a new desktop from the Windows 365 license admin center. You can assign a license for Windows 365. Go into the user licensing and apps. If you have already licensed it from your reseller, you assign the license, and that's it. And this is the enterprise. Keep in mind, I'm talking about the enterprise version, and this is how you, next I will demonstrate how you connect your Windows 365 desktop to your VNet. So you go into your endpoint manager admin center, go to Windows 365, and then we in devices we create a connection, enter the name of that connection, select the subscription, resource group, your VNet and subnet where you want this desktop to connect. Put in your domain credentials to add this Windows 365 Enterprise Desktop into your domain. Review and create, and you have a network connection, on-premises network connection enabled now. Once this is done, you can create and assign the desktops to the users. So first of all, you have to create a provisioning policy. Once you have that, you select the image, whether you can use a gallery image or you can use your own image as well, company image. And the assignments, the users that will have access to this desktop. Finance users, review and create, and the provisioning policy is created. Next is end user experience. Again, if a user goes to windows365.microsoft.com, uses his Azure AD admin, Azure AD credentials, username and password. This is the window that the user will see. They can log into this desktop, again similar to AVD, the AD credentials again, and then they get access to the desktop. So fairly similar to Azure Virtual Desktop, but the provisioning, the management is quite simplified compared to that, and most of the things you can do from the endpoint manager perspective. So now that we understand kind of 3 VDI options between Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365 desktops, and also there's an option of layering Citrix and VMware Horizon on top of it. It's important to understand distinction between which option fits which scenario, and there's there's a clear distinction, and I really want to focus on this. So Windows 365 is designed for simplicity. So depending upon, you don't want to spend too much time, there are less moving parts to worry about. But again, the limitation is these are personalized desktop. You cannot have pool desktop. You cannot have one machine shared with multiple users. There's going to be one user, one machine. But at the same time, this allows predictable per user per month pricing as well, because you're buying the desktop. It's like buying a PC or a laptop dedicated to that user. And again, it is quite scalable in the sense that you can change the SKU of the, let's say you bought a 2V CPU and 4 GB Windows 365 desktop, but the user needs more performance or there's slowness, you want to scale it up. It's easy, buy the higher SKU and just flip the button, move them up to the better performing desktop. In terms of administration, you do not need any prior VDI experience or skills to manage this environment. On the other hand, when we talk about Azure Virtual Desktop, it is designed with flexibility and control in mind. So there's flexibility and control in the hand of the administrator to be able to optimize that environment. Maybe you increase the user density, have more users sharing the same session host, and maybe make use of reserved instances on reducing the VM cost. So there are ways to optimize this flexibility, and you have control on how you want to kind of manage this environment. The multi-session Windows VMs are supported. There's no multi-session concept in Windows 365. If you have very strict data residency and geo requirements, in that case, of course, Azure Virtual Desktop, because you can restrict the deployment of your resources within a particular region, Azure region, and ensure that all components stay within the boundaries of the country. So and then if you plan to publish application as well, there's no way you can do that through Windows 365. Again, in that case, you would choose Windows Azure Virtual Desktop. If you need GPU support and there's an HPC requirement, HPC workload requirement, Windows 365 is not an option for you. You'll have to choose AVD because that is where it is supported. You have a lot of different options to optimize cost and user experience in terms of compute and storage that you select for your Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So there's a lot of flexibility. Again, back to this flexibility and control. It's Azure Virtual Desktop that you would choose. And then why would you choose or why would you add Citrix or VMware layer on top of it? If you want to optimize your existing investments into these solutions, you can integrate Citrix and VMware environment as well. So, and also, especially if you want to be in a scenario wherein you want multi-cloud or a hybrid architecture managed from a single pane of glass, then you would choose Citrix or Horizon path. So it's really important that there's an understanding where each kind of solution fits. These are all VDI options, but what is the right solution will depend on the environment and also your vision. If there's a vision to have independence from a cloud platform or a hybrid cloud, certainly you'll have to. There's no option other than layering Citrix or a VMware environment on top of it through their cloud or maybe even their infrastructure. If simplicity is what you're looking for, ease of management, then Windows 365, of course. But again, maybe because with Azure Virtual Desktop, the cost is again fluidic. You want to have predictable cost, then of course Windows 365. So with that, I would, if you have understanding to this slide, I would like to, I think that you'll be able to choose the right solution that would be a right fit for the requirement. And with that, I'll just close this. That's all I wanted to share with you. Over to you, Ego. And thanks everybody to stay online for this webinar.
Thanks, Jasdeep. So we do have a couple of questions in the private chat. I'll just take a couple of them. Is it possible to migrate an AVD setup from one tenant to another?
So tenant migration is not directly supported. As long as you're able to migrate the data, it's a migration path is there. There's no one switch migration, of course, but it is certainly possible to migrate component by component. Yes.
Then do the VMs hosting the AVD session shut down automatically, or is this built into a policy?
So the automatic shutdowns are achieved through Azure automation, but VM on Connect features, those are kind of a flip of a button kind of thing. But there is some scripting that is required in terms of automated shutdown of the VMs.
Okay. And the last question, is the Teams application also supported in AVD?
Yes, it's very much supported, and it uses the media redirection feature. In the background earlier it was not, but now Teams experience is, video calls, video experience is quite native because it uses the host machines for the video purpose. So that technology is already GA. Teams experience is quite seamless in AVD now.
Great. So we've run through our questions, and that completes the session today. Thank you, Jasdeep, and thanks to everyone for taking time out to join us. If you do have further questions following this webinar, feel free to reach out to us on email. We are here to support you. That said, thanks again, and bye for now.